The methodology focuses on four primary areas, which is strategy, people, execution, and cash. So those are primarily the four disciplines within all businesses that, for small and mid-sized organizations, they really struggle with. So we have a coaches community of, just under 300 globally. We are in pretty much all of the major, countries and across the globe. And again, our focus is primarily to support that small to mid-sized organization as they go from a couple million to a couple hundred million.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is Jason Wells, who is the president and COO at Scaling Up. Jason, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been a while coming for us to have this conversation. And so why don't we start off with you just telling everyone a little bit more about the company, who you guys are, who you help, and any context you'd like to share.
Yeah, Scaling Up has been around about 20 years. It is a methodology that is geared to help small and mid-sized organizations grow and increase their valuation and ultimately, probably exit or move on after that founder or that original owner got to a point where they feel it's time to move on. Like I said, the methodology focuses on four primary areas, which is strategy, people, execution, and cash. So those are primarily the four disciplines within all businesses that, for small and mid-sized organizations, they really struggle with. So we have a coaches community of, just under 300 globally. We are in pretty much all the major, countries and across the globe. And again, our focus is primarily to support that small to mid-sized organization as they go from a couple million to a couple hundred million.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And it sounds to me like it's very agnostic when it comes to the industry that you guys are helping, as long as they fit within the certain parameters that you guys want to help in that phase of growth, then free range for you guys to really help them and help them achieve those goals.
Yeah. I think the key thing there is it is a methodology that, can address a smaller organization, whether it's a service organization or a big manufacturer. And, everyone has different problems, but it usually comes down to, do we have the right people to, take us to the next level? Do we have A players, right? Do we have enough cash to make the investment and also cover payroll? Do we have, the execution and the operating procedures to really make sure that everything is running as smoothly as we can? And ultimately, it comes down to the strategy. Today's, world is it's changing dramatically all the time. So it's really important that organizations, I think, start taking a big picture, really what is the goal, and really start with the end in mind. And then as things come up with the industry or tariffs or international politics, whatever it is, that, that the strategy can absorb some of those changes and keep the business moving forward in a healthy way.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think so many times the avenues will change, the intricacies will change, but the destination is the same. So like it's having to adapt. And I think being adaptable is such a core trait for any company or any entrepreneur to actually succeed as well. And the four pillars of what you mentioned, I think are like so key. But talk to me about some of the patterns that you see in a lot of these organizations that you guys work with, some of the biggest mistakes, or maybe some of the biggest beliefs that hold them back from achieving those growths and applying those four pillars in an efficient way.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing that differentiates us, is those four pillars. Every business is different, right? So whether you're, growing fast or you've got a product that all of a sudden, just hit the market and you need to get it out there and you see a huge acceleration growth, or it's a very consistent business that you're trying to grow over time. The flexibility of our methodology, because when we, our coaches go in and engage, they're always asking like, what's their biggest problem with those, those companies, right? And that's really where we see some of those initial patterns. Some of those initial patterns might be, hey, I don't know where I'm going. I don't have a plan. I've just been winging this for the last 5 years and we've been doing pretty good. You've got other organizations that, feel like, hey, it's the founder. He was the one, but he also had to be the guy that knew everything, right? So everything went back to him. And he hasn't really built a management team or that next tier of leadership to really take that company to the next level. The other thing too would be on execution. Again, it's, well, we see a lot of organizations that they don't have it documented. They don't really have a operating model that
Yeah.
takes them through their weekly calls, a quarterly call, a daily huddle, just to keep all the communication going, and also the business moving forward and making sure that they're addressing the biggest issues that are holding back the company. When it
Mm.
comes to cash, that's probably one of the things that I think is under appreciated with a small and mid-sized business. You cannot, the room for error is very, very small. You have to make sure that every dollar goes as far as it can, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's either from hiring to, covering, just the day-to-day operations, to even making capital investments, and where do we make our investments to help us grow next year.
Mhm.
So when we go into these organizations, I think, when we ask what's the biggest problem, we do
Mhm.
get that, you know, that variation, which I do think our methodology and what's so unique about it is it allows our coaches to kind of, target the biggest pain point as they
Yeah.
enter that relationship. The reality of it though is what we see is, people still is a primary driver. Having that right resource in the right seat, doing a very, defined and, task
Mhm.
that to me is still something that I think most companies struggle with. You have a founder or have a friend or whatever, and this person has worked for you for a long time, but it's just not there to help you
Yeah.
grow to the next level. It's hard to have that difficult conversation.
Mhm.
And then like I said, on cash, I think that's the most important, because as you grow, the one asset that just sucks a lot of resources is cash. So you
Mhm.
need to make sure that you have enough, capability there to do that. So,
Yeah.
and that's primarily I would say I won't say the 1, 2. Most companies, company or, like organizations, their leader has a pretty good vision of where they want to go. Maybe it's not documented, maybe it's not articulated to everybody, but that's usually a pretty, it's something everybody should have, but it's not usually one of the biggest problems that we walk into.
Yeah, and it's so great that you're mentioning these things. Are you familiar with the theory of constraints?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we talk about it all day long. Is like
Right.
biggest constraint, and how do you either remove that and or hit it on with one of our 4 main disciplines.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because I brought that up because of what you were saying right now. Um, every single business that I've spoken with, which has been over 220 now, it's crazy to say out loud. Um, but there's always that one biggest constraint, right? If you solve that one biggest constraint, there's massive growth that comes. And so you find the next constraint, and it's just that period and period. But I think so many business owners are lost in that phase or trying to figure out what that constraint is because there's so many priorities all the time, right? So it's how are we able to find the right priority to focus on to then unlock all that massive growth, which is of course everything that you guys do when you come in. It,
Yeah. And that goes back to kind of some of the main threads that we see, right? You talk about, number one constraint usually is cash. I need to make an investment. I need to make payroll. And that is usually what holds some of the companies back as they start to grow is, not only do I need to, get to a steady state, I need to make sure I have and apply the right cash resources to bring on the new
yeah.
staff, to make an investment, or in modifying my product or designing a new product or
Hmm.
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
The other big the other big constraint, is the people side, right? Is, as much as I want to say AI does help, some, to accelerate or to disrupt or to remove some constraints around time and resources, it still comes down to, you've got to, have the right people in the right seat, really driving the business. You can't automate everything, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah. Well, not yet. Not yet. We'll see how things go. For now, but I definitely agree with you. And I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit here, Jason, to talk about your guys' business. Of course, you guys help so many different companies to achieve those success and the goals that they have. But you guys have your own goals and your own constraints, I'm assuming, as well, when it comes to growing your own company. So, talk to me a little bit about. You don't have to give me a 3 hour detail here, but talk to me a little bit about the some of the challenges, the obstacles that can happen when it comes to growing your company and the bumps in the road on the way to the destination that can sometimes show up.
Yeah, I think, for us, we have, like I said, just under 300 coaches internationally supporting about, anywhere from, 5 to 7,000, small businesses and mid-sized businesses all over the globe. So I
Mhm.
think some of the constraints that we always run into is it's usually a cash, kind of situation. I
Mm,
mean, we look at, we want to do everything for all of our coaches and as many customers as we possibly can.
mhm,
And it's, it really comes down to where are we making those investments to make our coaches more effective, to attract more coaches. We know that this market right now, everybody wants to be a coach. We have a higher level of expectation for our coaches.
mm,
Again, we have a methodology and we provide, the tools and some of the training associated with that. But it really comes down to the business acumen of our coaches and the capabilities. So we got to make sure that they are the best and brightest in the industry when it comes to helping small and mid-sized businesses.
mm,
So the constraints that I always deal with is how do we get, more educated, high level coaches serving, those small and mid-sized companies all over the world. And sometimes it requires cash to improve the brand, to
yeah.
educate coaches, to, to really provide, new content. The one thing that we see right now that's coming out is um, a lot around AI. So, how
Mm,
of our coaches, how are we going to our customer base and really incorporating some of those practices,
mhm,
leveraging our methodology, of course,
yeah.
but introducing new tools to help accelerate those businesses or to help really drive some growth for all those different small companies. Because some of those companies, what we see is small and mid-sized, they've got different problems, right?
Yeah.
They're not an Apple, they're not a Google, they don't have unlimited resources and unlimited cash. So how do we provide some of the same tools that, for the small to mid-sized
Mm,
businesses as some of the bigger guys do? So that's
mm.
always something that we're working on and we're working through.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really creating because as you said, it's such a crowded market now, right? There's coaches everywhere. Everybody's a coach of this, a coach of that. And I would say that the efficacy of a lot of these different programs and different companies can sometimes be questionable because there's so many of them. So it sounds like it's really just developing that awareness, but also building the trust for these new coaches of like, hey, this is the right place for you to actually pursue this path, and then educating them on why this is the right decision for them as well. Is that all sound about right? Or
For sure. There's a lot of people that have come up with a one-off methodology. If I look at the number of companies that and the case studies that we have when it comes to how these small and mid-sized companies not only have grown, but in many cases have exited
Mhm.
with, the valuation of those companies is significantly more than the the comparative market methodologies that might be out there that are
Uh-huh.
one-offs. We just, when we try to look at
Mm.
partnering, we try to partner with, some of the biggest and brightest, organizations in the world, whether that's chief executive, magazine Forbes, whether it's, people like Harvard that have a whole business school that are, and again, these are just US based, but, if you start looking at the different universities and the organizations that are truly global, I
Yeah.
think that that list gets really really small in terms of who I would want to coach my small and mid-sized business and help me grow. If I'm being very selfish about that,
No, it's
because
great
you
because
have to connect on that coach level.
yeah.
Otherwise, it just can't be. They come in and they teach you one thing and then they go away. I think that's doing a
Yeah.
disservice to the whole industry.
100% because just as the companies you guys help have to be picky on who they choose to be helped by, you have to be picky on who is going to be helping them. So it only serves you right to be able to make that decision in the right way.
And it's interesting that you say that because I think that's another differentiator for us. If you look at how we do, we think that relationship needs to be a little bit more bi-directional. I know a lot of other organizations might say, "Hey, I'm going to give you a client, go work with this this company, right?" And what we find is a lot of our coaches don't like to be assigned that account. You just
Mm,
don't get that, there's not that, part of growing and being, helping an organization go through a journey of really of growth and potentially an exit. It has to be trust based And I think that is where we feel like, the coach has to pick the client has to pick the coach. And when that fits, then that's really where we see the biggest success, rather than just being assigned a deal or assigned a lead or assigned a client. It just,
Yeah.
what we find is that just doesn't work for many of our clients.
Very, very cool. And then I love to ask a question that I've been asking almost everyone that comes on the podcast, which is this. Let's say you had a amazing magic wand, Jason, and you could just solve one thing, one challenge in the company that would allow you to hit all the targets, all the revenue goals, everything that you guys are striving to achieve. And as we were saying, there are often so many priorities, but you wave this wand and you can solve just one thing that would allow you to achieve your client acquisition, your revenue targets, just like that. What's the one thing you'd like to solve?
Yeah, I think the one thing right now, if you ask me today, that might be a completely different question in or two. But I think, I always talk about brand consistency and brand awareness. When you are a global company, it is real hard to maintain a consistent, brand, a premium brand, throughout all the different countries that we work with, on a global basis.
Yeah.
Also being, with what does your brand stand for? I think comes up a lot because, every country does businesses a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And frankly, to make sure that we are providing the same quality of service, the same image, the same quality of coaches, globally, that's probably the one thing that I won't say keeps me up at night, but that's definitely, something that we will always work for, on providing.
That's great because it ties into everything that you were saying. So I can really see the alignment on how you're thinking about those things as well, which is really awesome. And then a final question that I have here for you, Jason. It's actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. So are you ready for the question?
Shoot.
Here it is. If you can bring one attribute to your team that every team member should exhibit, what would that attribute be?
Um, I think in terms of what I preach all the time is like partnership. That's a partnership with our clients. That's a partnership with our coaches. That's a partnership as an employee into another employee. I think a lot of the organizations that I've seen out there, they focus on how can we serve somebody, and I feel like that's a one-way street. And many times, cases, I always look at, hey, listen, the best relationships are, and I don't care if it's, I've been married for, 30 plus years, and, it's a give and get relationship, right?
Yeah.
You can be honest with the person. They can help you solve this one problem where your skill set's not the best, and vice versa.
Mhm.
I think, when it comes down to businesses, it's the same thing, right? It's how you enter your partnership agreements, not just a vendor relationship, but a partnership relationship.
Yeah.
Where you engage with your clients. If, are they expecting you just to do this thing without ever, kind of contributing and maybe providing a case study or anything else in return? So
Mhm.
I always say partnership is probably the one word that, that everybody's on the equal level, playing ground, and let everybody use their special, unique talents, and because one person doesn't have them all, so it's great to surround your people, or yourself and your customers with where you can provide value and they can provide value, and I think those are the best
Mhm.
relationships.
You don't know how much I love that answer because we changed our entire business model to follow exactly what you just said because like it doesn't make sense to just as you said like the intention of serving is really really great. There's nothing wrong with that, but having that partnership in which you can work together to uplift each other in the best way possible, no matter if it's maybe a little bit outside the scope, maybe there's something that's that wasn't in the initial agreement, but it's something that you can help. So why wouldn't you help? It's your
Wow.
partner, right? So, yeah, I love that answer a lot. So, thank you for sharing that, Jason. This has been such an incredible conversation. I appreciate you, of course, taking the time. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, but of course, a little bit more about scaling up as well?
Yeah, I would have them, reach out to, my email directly. I have no problem sharing that personal email out there. And it's jwells, WELLS, at scalingup.com. You can also hit our website at scalingup.com. You'll find that at that website a lot about our methodology and some of our tools that we are using. But most importantly, there's a couple buttons that I'm most interested in is if you want to be a coach or if you want to find a coach. I'd encourage you to go there and reach out and fill out some information, and we'd love to talk to you. So
Amazing. I will, of course, leave everything down below here if you want to check any of that out. And if you're still listening to this conversation up until now and you want to hear more conversations like this, please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much, Jason.
thank you. Take care.